Before we begin, remember, in this world, trust is the deadliest weapon. Subscribe if you dare. And let's dive into a story that proves love can kill. The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Detective Laura Keene pulled up to the house on Crescent Hill. The windows were dark, the curtains drawn, and a car sat idling in the driveway. The engine long dead, the windshield wipers still ticking in the quiet rhythm of madness. Inside that car was 38-year-old Daniel Mercer, husband, father, and successful architect. Or at least, he had been. Now, he was dead. A single gunshot wound to the head, no sign of forced entry, no sign of struggle. And yet, the moment Laura stepped into that house, she felt it. The tension that only comes from secrets too heavy for walls to hold. The wife, Rebecca Mercer, sat on the living room couch wrapped in a blanket. Her eyes were red but dry. Her voice was calm, disturbingly so, as she said, "He wasn't supposed to be home." That one sentence would haunt Detective Keene for weeks. Rebecca told the police that Daniel had returned early from a business trip in Chicago. She claimed she had been asleep when she heard the gunshot and ran downstairs to find him dead in the car. But something didn't fit. Daniel's phone wasn't in his pocket, his briefcase was missing, and the security cameras at the front door had been conveniently disconnected hours before his death. The neighbors had heard nothing, but one had seen a dark SUV parked across the street that same night, engine running, lights off. When officers canvassed the area, they found tire tracks in the mud behind the property, leading into the woods. Whoever had been there hadn't stayed long. By morning, the Mercer house was crawling with investigators. Every inch of the property screamed of privilege. Designer furniture, glass sculptures, everything in its perfect lace. But it was too perfect, like someone had cleaned up chaos before the police arrived. And then came the first clue that broke the illusion. Hidden behind a framed wedding photo on the mantel was a small USB drive. Encrypted, password protected. But when the tech unit cracked it, the files told a story no one expected. Secret bank transfers totaling over $500,000. All moved in the last 6 months. The recipient, a woman named Elena Price. She lived 2 towns over, worked at a real estate agency, and had no apparent connection to Daniel Mercer. When detectives tracked her down, she was gone. Apartment abandoned, no forwarding address. But inside her empty home, they found a letter. No signature, no greeting. Just one chilling line. "If Rebecca ever finds out, we're both dead." At this point, the case split in 2 directions. One leading toward an affair, the other toward something far darker. Rebecca Mercer denied knowing anyone named Elena Price. But her phone records told a different story. There were dozens of late-night calls to a number registered under a prepaid SIM card, traced to an unregistered device. But when detectives ran the geolocation data, it matched an area near Elena Price's office. Detective Keene began to wonder, was Rebecca lying about the affair, or was she the one being deceived? As the investigation deepened, Daniel's financials painted a picture of desperation. He had drained his savings, taken out a secret loan, and liquidated company shares weeks before his death. The theory of suicide surfaced, but the gun had no prints, and the bullet trajectory didn't match. Someone had been close, maybe sitting beside him in that car. Then, something strange happened. 3 days after the funeral, a neighbor across the street reported a woman coming to the Mercer house late at night, wearing a hooded raincoat, staying less than 5 minutes, leaving something in the mailbox. When police arrived, the mailbox was empty. But inside the security footage from a nearby traffic camera, Detective Keene caught a blurry image of the visitor. It wasn't Rebecca. It wasn't Elena Price. It was someone else. A new suspect entered the story. Her name was Clara Voss, a paralegal at Daniel's firm. She had no criminal record, but a background check revealed something odd. She'd changed her name 4 years ago after a domestic violence case in another state. Her ex-husband had disappeared. When police questioned her, she was composed, polite, almost rehearsed. She claimed she barely knew Daniel Mercer, that she'd only spoken to him at work. But when shown the image from the traffic cam, her mask slipped. "I was there to pay my respects," she said. "At 2 in the morning?" Keene asked. "I didn't want to disturb his wife." Something about her tone made Laura's skin crawl. As the days went by, the evidence grew stranger. Text messages recovered from Daniel's phone backups revealed he had been meeting someone in secret, referring to them only as R. In one message, sent 2 nights before his death, he wrote, "It's done. She'll never find out. But you owe me for this." Rebecca claimed not to know what it meant, but when forensics examined the letter found at Elena's apartment, they discovered the paper fibers matched stationery found in the Mercer home office. Rebecca had written the letter herself. When confronted, she broke down. Not with tears, but laughter. "You really think you know the story?" she said. "You have no idea what he did." Detective Keene pressed harder, and Rebecca finally confessed. Not to murder, but to something else. She admitted that Daniel had been blackmailing someone at his firm, that the money wasn't for an affair, but for silence. She said Daniel had stumbled onto something illegal and planned to expose it, but before he could, someone silenced him first. Still, her story didn't add up. Why lie about Elena Price? Why forge the letter? And why was there a prepaid phone connecting her to a woman who had vanished? The next morning, a new piece of evidence emerged. A hard drive found in Daniel's office safe. Inside were hundreds of scanned legal documents, encrypted messages, and a list of names. At the top, Clara Voss. That night, as the storm raged on outside, Detective Keene drove back to the Mercer house to re-interview Rebecca. The driveway was empty, the house was dark, but inside the kitchen, she found 2 coffee mugs still warm, and the back door swinging open. Rebecca Mercer was gone, and in her place on the counter sat a folded note. "Check the lake behind the house." Keene grabbed her flashlight and ran through the mud toward the water. The rain hit hard, blinding her as the beam flickered across the rippling surface. Something metallic glinted beneath the shallows. It was a car key, attached to a tag that read EP. When the divers arrived an hour later, they pulled up a black SUV from the bottom of the lake. Inside, in the driver's seat, was the decomposed body of a woman. Blonde hair, dark coat, wedding ring still on her finger. Dental records confirmed the impossible. It was Elena Price. But her body had been there for weeks, long before Daniel Mercer's death. And that meant one thing. Whoever Rebecca Mercer had been calling all those nights, it wasn't Elena. If you thought Chapter 1 was twisted, just wait. Because in this one, the lies unravel, the masks fall, and someone you trusted turns out to be the real monster. Subscribe before you find out too late. The morning after the discovery at the lake, Crescent Hill was no longer a crime scene. It was a circus. Reporters, drones, flashing lights. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. If Elena Price had been dead for weeks, who had been talking to Daniel Mercer? Detective Laura Keene stared at the coroner's report, her stomach churning. Time of death, approximately 3 weeks before Daniel's. Cause, blunt force trauma to the skull. The details painted a disturbing picture. Elena hadn't drowned. She'd been murdered, and whoever killed her had gone through a lot of effort to make sure she was never found. But the thing that chilled Laura most wasn't the body. It was the fingerprints. They'd found partial prints inside the SUV, on the steering wheel, the door handle, and the rearview mirror. They all matched Rebecca Mercer. Rebecca, who was now missing. The warrant went out immediately. Her cards were flagged, her phone dead, her car abandoned near an old highway diner 15 miles away. The waitress remembered her. A quiet woman in a black coat, drinking coffee, staring out the window for hours. When she left, She said just one thing. Tell them to stop digging. But Laura Keene never stopped digging. At headquarters, the tech team finally decrypted the files from Daniel's office safe. Inside was the smoking gun. Literally. A scanned image of a suppressed email chain between Daniel and Clara Voss. In it, Daniel accused Clara of forging legal documents and laundering company funds. Clara begged him not to go to the authorities. Then there was one last email from Daniel's account. Meet me at the lake house. We settle this tonight. The timestamp? The same night Elena P. Rice disappeared. Laura's heart sank. The lake house was the Mercer family's old vacation property, 10 miles north of town. The place had been abandoned for years, but that night, it had been Daniel's meeting ground. And if Elena was found in that lake, someone else had been there too. When officers searched the property, they found it exactly as Daniel had left it. Dusty, empty, silent. But behind a loose panel in the floorboards, they uncovered something he'd hidden carefully. A voice recorder. The last recording was short. Just 27 seconds. Daniel's voice. I know what you did, Clara. And if anything happens to me, they'll know too. A woman's voice. You think you can control everything, Daniel? You're no better than me. Daniel, you don't have to do this. Silence. Then a faint splash. The sound of footsteps. A door slamming. It was enough. Clara Voss was arrested that afternoon. But as Laura sat across from her in the interrogation room, she couldn't shake the feeling that something still didn't fit. Clara didn't look like a killer. Her face was tired, hollow, but there was no fear in her eyes, only defiance. I didn't kill Daniel Mercer, she said quietly. He killed himself. Then why hide the recording? Laura pressed. Clara gave a faint smile. Because someone wanted me to take the blame. Someone who's been 2 steps ahead of you this whole time. When Laura asked who, Clara leaned forward, her voice barely a whisper. You're looking for Rebecca Mercer, right? You won't find her. Because Rebecca Mercer died 8 months ago. The room fell silent. Laura froze. That's not possible. Clara slid a file across the table. Inside were hospital documents, death certificates, and photographs. All authentic. Rebecca Mercer had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer and passed away quietly in hospice care. Her funeral had been private, handled by Daniel himself. The woman living in that house, the woman Laura had interviewed, comforted, believed, wasn't Rebecca Mercer at all. Her real name was Elena Price. The realization hit like a thunderclap. The real Elena had died weeks before Daniel's murder. But Rebecca, the wife, had died months earlier. That meant Daniel had replaced her. Or rather, someone had. The woman posing as Rebecca was living under her identity. And that woman had vanished. Laura raced back through the case in her mind. The fake Rebecca had filed the missing person report. She'd spoken to the media. She'd stood beside Daniel's body at the funeral. And the forged letter? It was a breadcrumb, an intentional distraction. The killer hadn't just covered her tracks. She'd rewritten the entire story. It was late that night when Laura got the call. A car had been found abandoned outside a motel in the next county over. Inside the glove box was a wallet containing the ID of Rebecca Mercer. But in the room itself there was something worse. A blood-stained envelope addressed to Detective Keene. The letter inside read, You were so close, Laura, but you looked in the wrong direction. Daniel wasn't my victim. He was my partner. And he betrayed me first. He promised me we'd disappear together, start new lives. But he chose money. He always chose money. You'll find what's left of him where it all began. The envelope also contained a single key, engraved with the initials C.M. Crescent Manor. Daniel's first architectural project, the mansion he'd built for a wealthy investor years ago. It had been abandoned after a financial scandal. When Laura arrived there, the air was thick with decay and memory. She walked through the dusty halls until she reached the basement door. It was locked. She turned the key. The stench hit first. Inside, the room was lined with plastic sheeting and old furniture covered in white cloth. In the center stood a single chair, and on it, a man's skeleton, still bound by duct tape, his skull shattered. The forensic team confirmed it days later. Daniel Mercer had been dead for weeks before the car scene was staged. The man in the car, the Daniel who'd been found shot in the driveway, had been a fake, a decoy. The killer had set the scene, planted the evidence, and vanished into the night, leaving a trail of mirrors behind her. Clara Voss was released soon after. The charges dropped, but she refused to speak again. The truth was too tangled to explain, and maybe too dangerous. The FBI joined the case, but the woman known as Rebecca Mercer, real name unknown, was never found. Her last confirmed sighting was on airport CCTV 3 months later, in Lisbon, Portugal. Blonde hair, sunglasses, carrying a child's backpack. She looked directly into the camera before disappearing beyond customs. The backpack was later found in a trash bin near the terminal. Inside was a photograph. It showed Daniel and the real Rebecca Mercer on their wedding day, smiling, happy, Anito, innocent. Across the back, scrawled in blue ink, were 5 words. He wasn't supposed to be home. To this day, no one knows who she really was, or how long she'd been living under another woman's name. Some say she was Daniel's accomplice. Others believe she was his creation, a woman built from lies, designed to erase his crimes. But one thing is certain. Love didn't kill Daniel Mercer. Deceit did. And it's still out there, wearing someone else's face. If you made it this far, congratulations. You just survived one of the darkest love stories ever told. But trust me, this was just the beginning. Hit subscribe, and I'll show you the next one. The betrayal that made even detectives lose faith in love.